Hi there, I'm Graham Fitch, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's live practice clinic. And if you're new to us or to the idea of the practice clinic, let me just explain quickly what happens. So subscribers to the online academy have the opportunity to send in questions that are related to practicing specifically, although of course we do step into other territories such as technique and style and pedaling and all sorts of other things. So it's a broad term, practice. But whatever it is we do, we need to worry about day by day at the piano. Basically gets covered here. So if you would please let me know where it is you're watching from. Press the nice buttons, the red one we like particularly, and I will get started in a second. So far I don't see too many people here, but you will be watching perhaps later. There we have people popping up. Welcome. I can't see you. My phone is sufficiently far away that I actually can't see who's there. But welcome anyway. And let me just get started with the first question that comes to us from Pat. And Pat asks, in Debussy's Clair de Lune, I would appreciate some help gaining proficiency beginning in bar 27. I'm having difficulty creating smoothness and speed in the remainder of the piece. Thank you for your help. So it seems that there are two questions there, one specific and one general. So if I address the specific question first, I mean, we probably all know Clair de Lune, but if I just, before I even get to the question, let me just put it in a little bit of context. So Clair de Lune just simply means moonlight. And if you look at how Debussy's crafted this opening, he's asked for it to be very expressive, and andante, très expressive. The other thing that he's done here is he's put duplets and triplets. In other words, the beat is sometimes divided up into three subdivisions, 1 and 2 and 3, and sometimes in 2, so 1 and 2 and 3, and then he further obfuscates that beat by tying the second of the duplets to the first of the next. So you get 1 and 2 and 3, and now it does not want to be played straight. Let me do it straight. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. So that was very strict and not what we want at all. But we do, however, have to be really aware of what happens between the beats. So often when I hear this piece, I lose where the main beats are, even if they're flexy. We still need to feel where the beats are. So in bar 3, you've really got to watch out there that you don't skimp. And if you notice, there's no break in the melody line at all. See, as the line falls down, I forgot what it's called when the moon falls through the sky. Is that waxing or waning? So he started up here, moves the left hand, but ties the right hand over, does the same job here. So we get this incredibly beautiful, smooth line where the whole thing is falling down, but the lines are muddied by the ties. So we don't get that break until we actually come to the end of the section, until the next section here. Rest in the right hand. And then the next section we feel is now starting to rise up. Listen to the bass. Having fallen in the first page, the music now rises up and gains a little bit in excitement. And we end up with this lovely kind of sparkly stuff at the top. And then the question that Pat is asking relates to the beginning of the next section, which is marked un poco mosso, in other words, a little quicker. Now let's unpack it a little bit. I'll play it first. So moving along a little bit. Now, if we look at what's going on there, we've got what I hear as two clarinets on the top. And another line that comes out here. Now, supporting that, two things that are supporting that. One is a bass line and one is rolling harmony. But if I just play you the bass line, and this is a really good way to create a little bit of speed, hearing the music in its kind of skeletal form. One bass note in that bar. One bass note in that bar as well. Not a fat bass note because it's only written as a 16th note semiquaver. Not this. He's written it that way in the previous bars, so a little bit more lean on the bass. Very slightly, not as much as that. Now, what I'm going to do is to redistribute a little bit the 16th note semiquavers. Now the fingering, or rather the distribution given here in this particular edition that I'm using, and I'll show you what it is in a minute, suggests that the left hand takes the A flat in the second beat, which means there's less distance for the right hand to have to move. Now similarly here, now this is my decision, not the editor's, I go over to the C flat in the third beat so that there's hardly any movement that I need to make in the right hand. One thing we do need to do is to hold on to this dotted half note beyond the pedal change on the second beat. That's really important because we need to hear the length of the line. So these two notes are the third and the fifth of D flat major. Then they're the root and the third of F minor harmony. See how that works? So we've got to be able to hear the length. Now here, I don't do that pedal change. The editor in this edition has suggested a pedal change at the end of the beat. This. I think that's squeamish. You don't need it. Because the dissonance is so short-lived and so minor, it's not going to disturb anybody. Now the edition I'm using, just so I can show it to you, and I particularly like it. I'm not sure that you can get it nowadays. It could be out of print. It's Daniel Ericourt, and it's called Masterclasses in Debussy Volume 1. And I bought this years ago in New York from Patelson's, which is now long gone, unfortunately. But you may be able to find it if you're lucky on eBay. It's got some very nice features. You've got a preface with, you can probably see it, descriptions about the piece, quite a detailed description. It's got fingerings, some of which are very good indeed, and it's got pedalings, again, some of which are very good indeed. Look out for an edition such as Alfred as well as the Urtext. Alfred is very good. I've always found it excellent because, again, it suggests pedaling, it suggests fingering. Debussy didn't write pedaling is in, so, you know, to have an editor go through that can be quite helpful as a starting point. Now, to get to the rest of Pat's question, I'm having difficulty creating smoothness and speed in the remainder of the piece. Well, if we look at the spot that I just wound up at bar 29, we've got a left hand which moves quite fast, really, in relation to the right hand. But it's got to be very light. We're pianissimo here. So how do we practice to get the sound that we want and the control that we want at the speed that we need to play at? So the first thing I would suggest is to spend a little bit of time, but not a huge amount, at being able to play it at what I call the speed of no mistakes. In other words, with fingering that we're going to use, with the sound that we're going to use as close as possible. And it's certainly got to be very rhythmic, so we can't be stopping and starting. Let's say the speed of no mistakes is this. Now I've achieved a good balance between my hands. My left hand is nice and light. My right hand sings, and my pedal, one pedal through the whole bar, please. Don't change that pedal. It's one harmony. Now, having spent a little time at the speed of no mistakes, I would quite quickly get on to a process called chaining, which is at the speed that you want to play at or close. We take a little bit. It might just be the first, from the first right hand event to the second. And then as soon as I can, I start to look down at my hands, because what we want to achieve there is memorized performance. So as soon as we can, when we're repeating little bits, do the first couple of repetitions looking at the score. And I notice I've got 2 4th fingers there on black keys. Now I can look down, and from my head, away from my head, into my body. So the idea there is I'm putting these sounds, these movements into my body. So that feels completely effortless. Then I know I'm ready to add the next little bit. And I notice I've got an F on the top there and an F on the bottom. This is actually quite important. Before I do a repetition, I ask myself, what is it that I need to improve the next time I play it? Was it that my left hand was lumpy? Was it that my arm was tight because I was worried I was going to miss a note? Was it that the right hand didn't have enough ring? Was it that there was a little delay before a note in the left hand? You know, you have to be your own teacher. We have to be our own teacher. So before I repeat, I would spend a moment seeing if I can mentally rehearse that change. As it happened, mine was perfect. It so happened that time I was happy with that. So then from there, I've now got one beat. I could start on my second beat. Just work it out slowly first. Now I'm going to aim. Now I'm noticing the pivot in my left hand. That pivot from my second finger is a little tight. So I might want to just practice the left hand. Just loosening up that moment there. Let's see if that's helped me. That's helped me a lot. Mentally rehearse it. Now I've got... you see how I do that? Gradually add a little bit. It could be a few notes, it could be a beat, it could even be one note at a time, however you feel. And just before I leave this, there's one spot, bar 37, where I think the fingering is really awkward and tight, even if I let go of my bass note. See, we've got a bass note that's officially to be held, but there's no sense in holding it because the pedal will be holding it. So there's no sense in holding it manually, I meant. Because I would prefer to move toward my thumb. But even with those movements and the release of the pinky, the positions are still a little awkward. So if you wanted, I've been exploring it, you could do this fingering 5 and 3 on the bottom note, bottom 2 notes of course, and then 2, 1, 2. You could cross over Same thing here, but with a 5 and a 4. 5, 4, 2, 1, 2. Back to a 5 and a 3. 2, 1, 2. And for practice, you could go up and back. It's quite helpful sometimes to practice little snippets like that in the direction they're written and then reverse the direction. So you go up and down, up and down. Can be useful. So that's just one other suggestion there for you, Pat. Now, moving on to the next question. And this is from Will. What is the purpose and how do I execute a note that appears on both the left and right hands simultaneously? For example, will you give an example that I can't locate the issue in the third movement of Opus 10 number 1, but I can see where you are with the next two examples. So the ascending line in the B section of Chopin 70 number 2. Similarly, I can't play the left hand D without it sounding like a staccato in bar 142 of the Pathetique's third movement. Okay, let's just look at that first since I've got it open here. What Will means is, if you look at 142, you've got a D in the left hand, and then you've got that same note immediately after. So why did Beethoven write something as awkward as that? He had to, because of his voice leading. If you look at the left hand from 140, can you feel that the voice leading the C to the C sharp, which has to resolve onto a D in that voice, in the middle voice. And if you look at how he's notated, it stems up and stems down. Otherwise he would fail his theory exam if he didn't do that. But he also wants in the right hand an appoggiatura, and he wants to reuse that D. So we must physically play the left thumb staccato. However, I can make it not sound staccato with a little use of pedal. I would be pedaling this anyway. I mean, it would sound awfully dry if I didn't. Let me just see what it would sound like without the pedal. My every instinct tells me not to do this, but I'm going to show you what it sounds like. I don't get any harmonic sense without the pedal. It doesn't. The notes don't blend together into harmonies. So let me pedal now by the harmony. Change, change, change. Half bars, half bar, change. Now on the end of this next bar, we've got a chromatic alteration in the bass line. So you obviously wouldn't pedal that in one. You wouldn't want that. So you'd either release the pedal or change the pedal. But now, when I say pedal, I don't mean I'm putting the pedal all the way down to the bottom and then lifting it all the way up to the top. I mean, I'm using the pedal to blend. And you may say, well, how can you do that? You've got scales, look. Are you saying it's all right to put those 4 notes in one pedal? Well, it wouldn't be if I were playing those 4 notes by themselves, but with the bass, it's absolutely fine, and more than fine. It's necessary. Change. In the Chopin example, this is the most beautiful thing, this waltz in F minor, Opus 70 number 2. But Will's question relates specifically to bar, I think you mean bar 45, where you've got, at that moment, let me just put it in its context. So, this bar. Now at that moment we have an E flat to play in the right hand, the melodic line, and we have an E flat to play in the left hand accompaniment. What are we supposed to do? Well, there's no sense whatever playing the same note, the same key with two fingers in a situation like that. There are situations where we might want to put two fingers on a note. Let's say I'm finishing the Chopin Berceuse, and I want to make sure I've got enough of this major third in the middle voice. I've got two D flats, one A flat. The A flat's not that important, but the warmth and the glow that I get from my major third is very important. I could experiment with putting two fingers on the key, putting 2 and 1 on the F, and just play. Because I've got two fingers on the note, I'm going to get a little bit more warmth from that. But in the situation like this, there's no sense in using two fingers on the same key. So what I would do is choose which hand plays it and let the other hand not play it. Now, it has to be, in my opinion, the right hand that plays it, because I would otherwise have to voice that to the middle of the 3-note chord. It's really difficult and clumsy. But if we just omitted the E flat from the left hand and then allow it to play the second chord, then I can hear the line rise. I want to hear that line. So that's what I would do there. Let me put that back into the context. So wonderful, this music, I just want to keep playing it. There is another version of this by Fontana, Julian Fontana, who was Chopin's friend, who posthumously published, posthumously not Fontana, because he was still alive when he published them. When Chopin had gone, he made a few changes. So in that particular phrase, let me look at in that particular bar in the Fontana edition, we don't have that same clash. So there are a few changes there that you might even have a look at that, the Fontana version. Great, so that's Will's question. Now Jill asks, in Grieg's Butterfly, I often miss when I have to land on right-hand fifth finger notes such as bar 4, and even harder bar 19, etc. Also, any tips on how to make this piece lighter and more graceful would be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, Jill, let's look at, well, do we know this gorgeous little piece? There. So the bit that Jill's meaning about the fifth finger is here, where we have to jump from an A to a C sharp. With any jump on the keyboard, it's the note we're jumping from that people neglect to attend to. They're always concerned about the landing rather than the jump. So if you imagine being on a springboard, where you land depends on how you take off. So if you imagine, I sometimes use the analogy of jumping on dry sand. So if you're on a sandy beach and it's dry sand and you try and jump, you're not going to get any propulsion really to speak of. Whereas if you're on a sprung gym floor and you do the same jump, the floor will lift you up and propel you forwards. So we need to use the note before the jump as propulsion. So that's one thing, and you can practice any jump like that. Think of springing off the note or the chord or whatever it may be, and as you jump, your body needs to be free. If there's any tension in my hand or in my arm, I'm going to slow myself down, because if I've got tension, I can't move. I need to be able to move. Now, where does the tension come from? I think it comes from the mind. I think it comes from worrying about where you're going to land. Oh my God, I'm going to miss this jump. I'm going to land on the wrong note. And because you're worried about that, anxiety, that's mental tension, that's going to translate into physical tension when actually you need to do the opposite to be safe. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're worried about it, you'll not land. If you're not worried about it, you'll land. Henry Ford, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right. So if we look at that in a little bit more detail, what I'm doing when I land on a pinky finger on a black key, somebody showed me this many years ago, I've never forgotten it, and I find it an endlessly useful tip. Don't land, I think you can probably see the keyboard, I hope you can, if I just go down an octave to make sure. So when I go onto my pinky, I'm landing obliquely, not square on, because if I land square on, there's a chance that I could slide off in either direction. But if I land at an angle, then I've got security. So jump, land. And what you could do a little bit of target practice. I'm now going to land on a variety of different black notes. Easy and reliable, very reliable. I almost can't get that wrong. Of course, the trickier bit is where we get a few of them in a row. What bar is that? 19. Jump, land. And again, the way I'm timing these landings is, this is a butterfly made of flexible materials. It's not rigid. It's not metronomic. So we don't want to feel stiff. I could linger a little bit before I play. Reach. The butterfly is. I love the way this piece moves because the butterfly flits from one place to the next, sometimes settling for a while. And other times just taking off. Transparent. So what I'm doing there is just allowing the piece to move freely, and I'm using a leggiero touch. Is that marked in here? Not really. He's marked it allegro grazioso, gracefully, but it's the touch we want to develop here is leggiero. Which is a kind of staccato quality in even if I'm not actually playing staccato, it's not that, but mind you, I would practice that with a very light finger action, weightless arm, and it's going to sound a bit dumb, but see, I wouldn't even fuss too much to join that to that. Maybe the right hand joined. I can join the right hand when it has the dotted quaver, semiquaver, that's dotted 8th, 16th pattern. But all of this, so my arm is weightless. There's no down pressure into the key in the faster notes. And you know, when you look at the difficult bar 7, people struggle with this. If I just do it slowly, the confusing thing is there's a great big legato mark, slur mark over the bar there. Don't play too legato. It's one long pedal anyway in that bar. So we don't need to kill ourselves making heavy connections. There's a good way to practice that, which is if you take the double notes and think of them as two voices. See, there's a double note. I'm going to ignore now the lower of those two. Let me see if I can do that fast. Now let me ignore the upper of those two and play you the alto, if you will. And I can work with that. And you'll notice also something that's very important there with the way we move. I'm going to need rotational movements here. And depending on which finger you choose, I like to put a thumb on the F sharp there. I need to move inwards and upwards. And then back out again. Up, down. Because the black keys are higher up and further away. Right, thank you, Jill, for your question. David, yes, what practice strategies do you recommend to achieve a leggiero touch in the second cadenza, measure 51, of Chopin's Nocturne in F sharp, opus 15, number 2? And this is the most exquisite piece. The fioratura, as it's called, it's this sort of thing. Let me see if I can play it. Not too bad. Those fioratura, I can show you how they're printed in little notes like this. You see, now I can remember as a kid looking at those things and feeling petrified. How on earth do you do them? How can you play so fast? He's written them, and they even look like little flowers on the page, and they sound like little flowers, like a meadow of tiny little edelweiss or whatever. So you want to go again for the weightless arm. With no pressure into the keyboard. I don't want to be pushing into my keyboard there. And the weightless arm is a little bit like making pastry, where you lift the flour and whatever it is, the fat, into the air and try and get as much air into the mixture as you can. Here as well, we don't want to be bogged down, and the arm must be light and maybe a little higher here in the elbow. That would be the first thing I'd do, would just be to practice it very lightly staccato. The next job would be, well, that would give you the I'm looking at your question. That would give you a leggiero touch, but then you've got to organize the right hand with the left, and I'm sure you've done that. But for the benefit of anybody else who may be watching, who is wondering what the heck do I do there to put the two hands together. It is free in the sense that you don't want to be constrained to put this note with that right hand note. However, it's a useful thing to practice it strictly, so that you use the synchronized right-lefts as anchors that you can later shift around a little bit. And the whole reason for writing it like that is for it to be free. Think of, I'm mixing my metaphors here, but caged birds versus free birds. Caged birds haven't got any freedom. Free birds that can fly where they want. So you can, in the end, fly where you want. But it is divisible into groups of 10. So if you practice it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So that E sharp could coincide with the D in the left. And what you could do for practice is just to practice that group. Just stopping there. So you anchor those two notes together. And then you could start the next group as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me just see if I can concentrate. I have to concentrate to play this. It's there. So, and so on. There are two more things to say about it for the leggiero touch. One is pedal. The pedal can't be all the way down. It has to be very sensitive, where the damper is. If this represents the string and this represents the damper, so this is pedal up. Yeah, my pedal is now up. Damper is on the string. When I put my pedal down, the damper comes up. Now, if I put my pedal down just a little bit, the damper comes only just off the string. Can you hear that? So this would be, let me just do something full pedal. Full pedal. And I'm going to slowly lift my pedal. Can you hear that? I've got fractional resonance, partial resonance. My foot is just barely down into my pedal. And when I start to get offended by too much resonance, what I do is I wiggle my foot just a little bit, flutter. I don't lift it all the way up to the top. I certainly don't want to go any further down, but I would just vibrate my pedal a little bit to clear the worst of the, I mean, it's supposed to be misty. That's the whole point. It's not supposed to be squeaky clean, but there's a cut-off point there where it may get too misty, in which case the pedal is just, let me just see if I can show you. Now I'm starting to vibrate it here. When I get to the end of the fioritura, I do something a bit sneaky. I hold onto my left hand by hand so that I can make something a little bit more expressive out of the end of this fioritura passage. Because at the beginning you've got a kind of shimmer. It's just like a light shimmering. And then you've got a sigh. A chromatic scale. It's that kind of. And then you've got something at the end which is just a little bit more expressive vocally. So if you were to sing it, I highly recommend singing vocal lines. I don't think you could sing this unless you were a yodeler. But at the end, for sure, I'm hearing how the A sharp acts as an appoggiatura against the harmony. So gorgeous, isn't it? I mean, where would we be without Chopin? I can't imagine a world without Chopin. That's the end. So all that remains for me to do is to thank all of you who submitted questions, and I hope I've been able to address them. And to thank you for your attention and to wish you happy holidays. And I look forward to seeing you in January for another Facebook Live. Happy New Year.